Morning, everybody. We've had a couple of very interesting discussions. Just before we had a panel with college students talking about their engagement with climate and what is happening in their world. And I think that the the purpose of this panel is to look at global initiatives that we have, especially as it relates to climate change, and what we're doing is great in each initiative. Are we so siloed that we're not sharing? Are we so siloed that we are not able to come together on same issues? So whether it's a question of any of the UN SDGs, whether it's global health, whether it's looking at education, whether it's looking at climate, are we doing enough to bridge the divide? And why are we talking about all of these issues as separate? Because one issue is absolutely essential to the other issue. It would be great if we fixed the climate, but if we killed our biodiversity doing it, would that be beneficial for us? So with that, I'm going to take a minute and introduce everybody, ask everybody to introduce themselves, and we'll take it from there. Along with me today, co-moderating is Anika Pampel. Anika, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself, and then we'll go on to the panelists.
Hey, everybody. Welcome again back to Davos Worldwide. Honored to be here and learn from some more great minds. I'm going to pass it right along to Indu. I hope I did that correctly. Please go ahead and introduce yourself. Go ahead.
It's Engu, but yes, close.
So, hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ngu Mocho. I am a founding managing director for a company called Vitilaria. We're a project development and delivery platform. We kind of exist at the intersection of health equity, energy equity, and impact finance. And our thesis is that we can use AI and software, enterprise software, to develop infrastructure with an impact focus in underserved communities. We think one of the fastest and most effective ways to demonstrate climate mitigation and adaptation in underserved communities is to have data liquidity, transparency, and increased trust. And right now, everything, the way you reduce the silos is by making sure that you can connect. First, you can capture the data in whatever you do and connect it, and then build capacity at the local level. That way you increase trust and engagement. And one of the fastest ways, one of the greatest opportunities to affect climate change is to go to underserved communities that are disproportionately at risk of climate threats. So that's kind of where we focus. We look at energy projects, health, biodiversity, agri, food, supply chain, everything along that line, and we focus on financing and delivery. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Engu. Tammy, if you would be so kind.
Hi, Anand and everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I'm Tammy Scarlett, Executive Director of Unify.org and founder of the White Lotus Global Initiative, which is also the home of the Impact Portfolio model, a model that we created specifically to address the issue of silos and try to get some aggregation and cooperation and elevation and optimization to be a rising tide that raises all ships for humanity. My background is in business, psychology, anthropology, and as far as academia is concerned, where my focuses have largely been in cross-sector, transdisciplinary, really whole living systems design. How do we find approaches where we can come into something and design systemic methods and approaches that will give us exponential results? And so in my opinion, it's really important for us to be taking these approaches and working together and just experimenting even with what are some ways that we can iterate what working together like this might look like for humanity, particularly these next 6 years we have before us.
Great, thank you. And Marian, I wanted to save you for last because I wanted you to be the beacon here about some of the initiatives that you're doing, and especially about bringing people together, as that is your central focus.
Thank you so much, dear Anand. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here among such distinguished luminaries and beacons. So I really deeply appreciate that comment, and it's my honor and pleasure to be here on Diverse Worldwide and to share about the initiatives for humanity to come together right now in peace and unity. And I'm so, a bit about me. My name is Meher Ryan Sarath, and I am we call ourselves the Regen Next Gens. I've been an active Next Gen impact investor and philanthropist in family office circles and in global leadership circles for social impact for the past over a decade. And I've seen some over my years as a filmmaker and working with grassroots nonprofits in 30 countries and particularly in some very impoverished areas, and really seeing that there are gaps and silos in how impact is being addressed and being solved all over the world. And so really my initiatives as a founder and CEO are designed specifically for people to come together and to create holistic solutions for communities that are being disproportionately affected by climate change, that are being disproportionately affected by economic disparities, and also that are underserved in terms of their storytelling, because I really feel like it's storytelling and it's amplifying underserved voices and also voices globally. That's really at the heart of my work and what I love to do so much. And because I really feel like there's a narrative that's been passed down for generations, and we call it history. And it's a very interesting meta narrative of history because it really comes from some perspectives. And so I'm really interested with both of my initiatives that I will share about. I'm really interested in us all as humans taking this moment and to collectively move into our story, which is how we are moving forward together and amplifying all voices. And because now we have these technologies that we can do that with. So we have immersive media, we have social media, we have all of these voices, and I really truly believe and know that it's everyone's voices singing together in this global choir that really makes the difference, and that we are all, as humans, as a species, we're all a grand orchestra together, and it's up to each of us to play our instruments and to speak and to sing our voice together, and that's how we really evolve gracefully as humanity at this time and beyond. And so it's in that spirit that I'm happy to share about the Peace Train, which is one of my initiatives as founder and CEO. And as founder and CEO, I'm very much doing what I can do and playing my instrument in my role to make this happen, because it's really all of us together as a global community of artists and creators of all types. We were just speaking backstage about artists and that we're all artists. And I truly believe that we're all artists and creators. We all create life and we all create what we do in different ways. And so even breaking down the silos of who is an artist, what is an artist, like what is art, and really addressing the reality that we all create what we create. We're all artists, we're all innovators, we're all here creating different things in the world. And so as artists and creators, I'm crying. It's like one of those moments. It's as artists and creators, it's so important for us to come together and to form a new economy and to amplify art and artists in all of our creations and to move together to heal the lands and lineages of areas that have experienced war. Because truly it's as a unifying narrative for humanity, we've all experienced some type of trauma, we've all experienced some type of war. It's actually a very unifying human narrative and an experience. And so as the stewards, as us, of future generations of humans as well as of the planet and now of AI, it's very important for humans to come together and to collectively heal humanity. And now we have all of these beautiful techniques to do that, with sounds and frequencies, biohacking, health and wellness, solutions for humanity. And so what the Peace Train is doing is sharing a meta narrative of the imperative for all of us to heal humanity together and to live in peace together. And we believe that world peace is a combination of inner peace, tangible prosperity, and living in purpose. And so when each human has that ability and is empowered to do that, which is what we're sharing from the Peace Train, it's all of the global community of artists and creators and innovators who are all sharing these solutions with humanity. It's truly then that we and sharing these solutions so that every single person on the planet can be all aboard and to participate in this collective healing and thus thriving of humanity, that we can all move forward together. Because it really takes everyone, and this is for everyone, and breaks down all silos, really, because it really it touches upon what is human and what is unique to all of us, and also what we all have in common as we come together and celebrate peace and prosperity and purpose and thriving and joy. I'll pause there. That was that was quite longer than I expected. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and on this
No
beautiful
problem.
panel. Thank you.
I'm going to start with you, Engu. You know, we've had decades of what we commonly refer to efforts in Africa that were largely manna from heaven modeled, that we found to be both unsuccessful in large quantities, as well as sometimes even dehumanizing, because they came with certain caveats. We'll give you this, but then you have to do that. Today, Africa is booming. African economies are thriving. They are exponentially growing. And it is a time of celebration, of a time of bringing things together. There are lots of issues. But what do you see in your region when you look at, in the African region, I should say, when you look at initiatives that are happening that sometimes are at cross purposes, sometimes even contradictory?
Wow, how much time do we have? This is so, God bless you so much for that question, and thanks for the opportunity. Prior to this, I was introducing myself to Annika and Tammy. My late father worked for the U.S. consulate, so I grew up as a child of kind of watching how the U.S. State Department works within a growing nation in Cameroon, where I was born. I went to university in the UK, came here, served in the US Navy, and then worked in Pfizer, and then went back to Nigeria, hired by GE Healthcare to manage the healthcare business. So I also saw how a corporation can use its balance sheet to try to build a nation, build healthcare within. There was a program called Company to Culture, Company to Country MOU, so C2C, between GE and the government of Nigeria to build power, healthcare, and so you see from a government, from a nonprofit. I'm an Ashoka Fellow. I've run a nonprofit in the US. So I've had this unique set of experiences. So the last few years, I've decided to dedicate myself to designing the right kinds of projects that are fit for purpose for the African continent, for the African community, and that are designed to optimize the local contractor SME. So I'll give you two potentially conflicting, but I think complementary data points. On one end, the African diaspora, and I'm going to use Africa as an example, but this happens to all underserved communities, even in the US, African Americans and Hispanics. The African diaspora sends $100 billion a year in remittance to Africa. So this is money that is after-tax money that you folks send to family members to pay for daily living, for healthcare, education, and medical and death benefits. And this is inefficiently done. It's sent rampantly. So the money transfer companies make a killing doing this. On the other end, on the continent of Africa, Africa needs $280 billion a year in infrastructure development. The World Bank is never going to be able to lend you enough money, because whatever the World Bank or IMF lends, it's tied to your resources, and there's no controls in place for the governments to actually deliver the projects and pay back on the debt so the country's balance sheet can be healthy. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you love Africa and you love America and you've come here and learned, and you want to take what you've learned and take back to the continent, how can you fix this? The great opportunity, and this is my charge, and this is why I was invited to this talk, is to really challenge the global community, the family offices, the philanthropy communities, and the donor community. If you really want to do good, right? If you have finances, capital, you want to donate and do good and have lasting, sustainable impact, let's have a new class, a new asset class, right? And the word impact gets frowned at, but we call it impact infrastructure. Impact investment has been also bastardized. But what we do at Vitellaria is we try to figure out how do you take impact or commercial or donor money and put it in a structured vehicle using software, technology, AI, smart contracts, digital asset controls, because the issue is transparency and governance, right? So if you, Anand, give me $100 and you say, Ngu, I have $100 to donate and it's tax deductible, but I don't have $100 to give you every month. I want to give you, Ngu, $100 because next month I'm going to give Annika $100 and next month I'm going to give Tammy $100. And I have $400, and when I give Marion $100, my $400 for the year is done. And next year, I want you guys to pay that back to me. And if you pay that back to me with 5%, 10% interest, I'm likely to give it back to you as $110, $105 to keep doing what you're doing. If I give you an option like that, you would more likely give me the $100 as opposed to give it to somebody where I'm going to come back to you next month for next year for another $100. So I think the philanthropy model, because the incentive is just to get the tax write-off, is broken on one end, right? It's self-serving. I'm just going to throw money into this bucket, it's a 501c3 bucket, and get my tax write-off, and I feel good about myself. We create an opportunity where philanthropy can meet development impact, and that money can actually unlock more capital. There's $2.5 trillion sitting in sovereign wealth funds and pension funds across Africa alone that is not being used because there's a development capital gap of $100 to $200 or $500 million across the continent. If you give me $10 million, I can unlock 100 million in projects. I can give you a 10x conversion, almost guaranteed within 12 to 24 months. So my challenge, and the way you break down the silos in ESG, is you put controls around these donations, around these contributions, such that the ESG/SDG guidelines can be met, right? So for every $10 you give me, make sure put $3 towards reporting on and advancement towards SDG and ESG, while $7 goes to delivering against the project, or $4 goes to delivering within the project, and $3 goes to training more young women and men in that community. So 3 years from now, I'm not dependent on your donation anymore. 3 years from now, whatever we build is being owned and managed by the locals. So it takes away from that devil's bargain that the continent has been suffering from for the last however many years. So this is what I'm trying to build at Vitellaria. It is the most difficult thing I've done in my entire adult life. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing. We at Davos Worldwide, we started with a very simple principle of how do we make impact truly sustainable, and impact can only truly become sustainable when it's investable.
Yes.
Right. When we say, to me, sustainability means still philanthropy. Right, because there's no return. There's no so the incentive, as you said, is my 503c pocket, and that's it. I'm not looking at SDGs or ESG for that matter in terms of investment portfolio. My asset managers are not looking at this as an asset class. Nobody's looking at this as something that's going to generate returns. I might get a certificate, or I might get invited to a dinner, or be nominated to some position, and that's pretty much it. Or invited to the UN or the World Economic Forum or somewhere to talk about it. But that's not helping people. But coming to what you said about allocating a certain percentage to reporting. Unfortunately, what we've seen sometimes is that the amount of money that's given and then the reporting requirements that are placed on top of it actually takes up 80 to 90% of that investment. And this is not a new thing. It's a recurring thing. If you have the World Bank fund a project, the reporting burdens are so high.
May I,
Yeah,
if you don't
go
mind,
ahead.
Anna? So I worked with GE and I tried to get projects funded with IFC. It's the most difficult thing to do, to actually work with these organizations. You're right. It's insane, the burden that they place on these organizations. So you have to flip it, okay? This is why my task has been start with a family office or donor or a company, an organization that has a clear mandate. We want to make sure more women are in business. We want to make sure more local SMEs are empowered. We want to make sure that you actually build an integrated value food processing play that actually takes the fruit from the plant, from the farm, and processes it into a finished value-added product and sells it. Very clearly defined models. And then you integrate within, you see the cost of reporting is exploded, is exponential, is made ridiculous because the reporting is done by foreigners. It's done by people who don't understand the local burden, and they come in and stay in 5-star hotels when the project is happening in the village. The more you localize this thing, and you have to use technology. Today, we have enough software. I'm partnering with a group called Vanadium and their technology stack. It's built in smart contracts. You can use distributed ledger technology. You can use AI, and we can design. It takes 18 months to design an impact bond, right? When you're trying to do an education project in India or to do a Cameroon cataract bond in an eye hospital in Cameroon, to do a $2 million bond, it took 18 months for OPIC to design that bond. It's ridiculous. It's because of this perceived artificial risk that's placed on these countries. If we're honest enough, and if we take the advisors out of it, right, you can do that in 30 days, Anand. We can do that in 30 days. So it's about building a new model, designing a project-based vehicle. And I'm trying to, Tammy and Annika, please bear with me one more minute. Let me say one thing. I have 2 projects that I'm trying to do. One is called the Diaspora Remittance for Impact Program. So we're leveraging this $100 billion a year to design a fintech company with a purpose. So the fintech company allows Africans in the diaspora to send money home, but a percentage of that gets contributed to a development fund, which pays for financial feasibility studies for projects that are designed by Africans for Africans, with its own impact outcome scores designed by the Africans, not by the World Bank. So that's design number 1, and everything is run with an enterprise software model. The second one is called SGAI. This is SME Green Advancement Initiative. So in every project that has a net zero target or a decarbonization target that has been funded by the DFI, by World Bank or development finance institutions in Africa, we will go in and say, if you mandate that the local contractor or supplier is an African organization, an African-led or locally led organization, we will, working with Bechtel.org, which is a big EPC, we will train them and certify their processes and their project control systems so they can be creditworthy and demonstrate reporting systems that show that whatever they're doing is reducing to a reduction in carbon and CO2 emissions and greenhouse gas. So now you're empowering this local capacity to do what we do in the US and in Europe as if it's some magic. It's not magic, right? So there's systems in place that we can put and tie to projects that have been funded to deliver this energy transition and decarbonization, and let the locals use their money for their own transformation.
I appreciate that. And again, I don't mean to make this a discussion about Africa itself, because this is a global discussion. But at the same time, what I do want to point out is that one of the challenges we have, or I should say, the starting point of the challenge when we talk about Africa is that we tend to think of Africa as one.
Yes.
You know, we don't take into account the multiple nations and the various different levels of economic development within Africa. So we compare Botswana as we would talk the same language about Nigeria. And these are, as you know, from being on the ground, not very similar economies.
Very true.
Yeah. So keeping that in mind, just and of course, if we add Egypt into it, it just completely skews the conversation and people get confused.
Yes.
So for some reason, we in the West tend to think that Egypt is not part of Africa somehow. It's some other place.
But
Uh,
I'll give you a Trojan horse strategy where
yeah.
we can use to remove the silos of ESG, transform the continent, and have everybody win. On one end, MasterCard Foundation's trying to develop, I think it's a million jobs in Africa, of which 70% are going to be women. Okay. I actually think that's a brilliant strategy. I heard from a very, very impactful physician in India, Dr. Devi Shetty, that if you give a woman $1, she spends 70% of it on the family. If you give a man $1, he spends 30% on the family. So the more women have money and disposable income, the better the society. Usually, I think that's true. So if you take ESG as an initiative, as an objective within COP16, we match that with like a MasterCard Foundation's goal of empowerment and workforce. And then we say we need more women in STEM and in engineering and infrastructure, because you have to do the hard stuff. The soft projects don't transform society. So if we get women empowered and trained to do infrastructure development, the projects that are funded with bigger dollars, we kind of win a triad. And then they sit as the referees of governance, okay, and sustainability and environmental benefit. You get to transform that society faster, because as men, we tend to do whatever we think the women need us to do so that we can look good, right? And our mothers also, we live up to the standards set by our mothers. We follow the examples of our fathers, but our mothers set the standard, right? So every society is the same. And I think the way to transform Africa is by empowering the women, putting them in these positions, and they'll set better standards. And if we fund projects led by them, we get there faster.
No, I agree. Tammy, you've designed programs all over and from small scale to large scale. Tell us a little bit about what you see as challenges, especially when it comes to breaking down silos, especially when it comes to um, combining initiatives.
Certainly. Yeah, thank you, Anand. I think that we all understand that our societal frameworks have been designed for individual success, whether that's an individual who's the best in class because of performing in their studies or sports, or a company who's made the Fortune 500 list. But whatever it is, we're taught that this siloed competition where you kind of need to like keep things secret, stay out of my lane so that I can speed past you is the way. And in some ways that's been true for millennia, because we can see this as patterns in how humanity learned to expand by way of force and violence, and to have like one move ahead of another and then take power. And so this has been something that's been ingrained, that we've built successful society on as we've been advancing in our consciousness more, and we've shifted it over time. So there's less killing now on the planet than before. Not that that's totally gone, obviously, but as now we're continuing to evolve in our consciousness, we're recognizing that there is a natural way that nature actually shows us in the very fabric of its being that is also present in humanity, in the ways that we are just pre-woven to be able to interact together. But participating in those ways is challenging because it's just not been taught or practiced. So I like to say we as humanity are largely under-practiced at collaboration and interoperability. It doesn't mean we can't do it. It doesn't even mean that we don't know how to innately do it. I think we do know how to innately do it. It's very present in the fibers of our being. So part of it is psychological. And for me, so my graduate work at Harvard was in collective impact measurement, how to garner global population participation, and psychological factors of engagement. And now in my dissertation doctoral work, I'm working on living systems design And a lot of this work is very present in the prototypes that I, ask people to come to or participate in myself on the planet. And so I'm seeing, I'm pattern recognizing how this is going. And we have our resistances. I have my own resistances to it. It's not easy to show up to something and actually park ego at the door and not necessarily have to be the best in class at something that I've been striving for my whole life to be best in class in this new framework. It's like, how do we actually bring together what we have and make it something that can move forward better together? So I like to ask the question or reflect on, can we as humanity take responsibility for what's possible moving forward? Can we look at what we have and take inventory of our assets and our momentum and simply iterate, just experiment with what might be possible today that didn't look like it was possible yesterday, that could yield us some sort of exponential results? And if we begin to just practice in that framework together, knowing that there's not necessarily a wrong answer here, we're learning as we go, then we're going to get forward faster. So the White Lotus Global Initiative, we have our impact portfolio model. In this, we have 45 organizations and companies. In fact, Marin's Peace Train is one of them. We love the Peace Train. And in this beta that we're running, it is a collaborative where these organizations are being optimized or allowing themselves to optimize in some of the areas that matter most, because why would we not be showing up with the best that humanity has to offer in the areas that need it most on the planet? So we put ourselves first, and it's kind of like doing the inner work, but for all of our organizations, getting optimized and then being willing to be at that table to share notes on, you know what, I'll go ahead and show you what was really challenging for us, even though it looks like dirty laundry. I'm going to go ahead and show you what's working best for us, even though I kind of am afraid you might steal my idea. And these are really awkward places for humans to be at, but it's real. That's a real thing for how most people feel. Man, woman, ages, doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing that feels important to you in life, you're going to have some rough edges around it that are like that. So I'm a big fan of us prototyping and iterating things where we can practice collaboration and interoperability, being honest about what feels uncomfortable and what feels like, hey, this part feels easy. Let's put more towards that. And then start to do that in an organized way. And I'll just add that one of the things that we're focused on in the impact portfolio model is data and taxonomy, because the interoperability piece is, in my estimation, it's gold. Far more than data. We're not going to be able to do what we need to do with data if we don't focus on the interoperability. So that has to do with human interoperability, with behavior and interaction, and that has to do with data interoperability, backend API integrations, the different tools that are coming out to be able to spider apps. That's going to need to be done on all different levels. So a lot of our partners that we're working with in the world have those focuses as well. And again, I encourage anyone, wherever you're at in your organization or initiative or company or project or whatever you're working on, to see who is in your network that is willing to show up at a table and have discussions around what's possible, that is willing to look at their own collaboration readiness and say, hey, how can we get more collaboration ready? I'm willing to look at things differently or try something new, and be around those people, play with those people, so that we can move humanity forward faster.
Thank you so much. I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit in some of the challenges that we see when it comes to a program. And I'm going to pick on you, Marion. So when you bring together an initiative like the Peace Train, currently the problem that we have largely with ESG and with SDGs is the divide between the global north and the global south. We have two levels of development. We have a developed economy in the north, or largely developed economies in the north. And then we have a huge amount of humanity in the global south, where we have developing countries from the BRICS nations and to all the way to underdeveloped nations. And we don't need to pick on anybody, but at the same time, how do you include in your initiatives global south?
I love this question so much. Thank you, Anand. And also, Tammy, I was cheering as you're speaking about collaboration, and I really feel like this is exactly it. As we collaborate and really celebrate culture. One of the things I love so much about traveling and being in different cultures and living all over the world, and also as a filmmaker, inviting people from all over the world to share their perspective and their voices, and to hold space for that, and to amplify impact initiatives all over the world, as is my practice. Is I'm consistently inspired and love people who are coming from cultures that have not historically been invited to share their perspectives, and inviting them to share their perspectives and learning about their culture. And I love so much that we, with on the Peace Train, there's an opportunity to not only to highlight cultures and to celebrate cultures through the vehicle of the Peace Train, because the Peace Train is a vehicle for the creator economy movement and peace movement, the world peace movement, and also is an opportunity for cultures all over the world to highlight their culture, and to alchemize any trauma that the culture has experienced through the authentic expression of music, culture, art, and joy. And so that's really how we're addressing it, is and to your point earlier, Anand, about Africa. There's so many beautiful cultures in Africa, and every nation, and also the tribes in every nation as well. There's so many different cultures and voices and dialects and beautiful art and expressions. And this is one of the reasons why. And also living in Mexico. I lived in Tulum, Mexico for 2.5 years, and I'm very close with the Mayans. And I also in Mexico, and also in the South. I was present at the ceremony of the eagle and the condor with all of the Mayan elders from across the Americas. They came together at this daytime ceremony with this prayer for the uniting of the eagle and the condor. This is in 2021. And these prayers have been shared all around the world by different indigenous cultures, and by people who are seeing that we can come together as the eagle and the condor, which is the North and the South. That's what that represents, is the uniting of the North and the South. And so I was very, very honored to be present, one of 2 non-Indigenous Mayan people present at that ceremony, and celebrating the uniting of the North and the South. And I really see that the Peace Train can be a very great vehicle, literally vehicle for the celebration of art and culture. And also importantly, although we're starting in season 1 of the Peace Train in the global North, in France, from the 81st anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, because this is my mother has been organizing the ceremony there for the past 20 years for the D-Day ceremony. And this is an opportunity to sound heal veterans, active military, and top military generals, and also global leaders who are present in the ceremony. And then move together across Liberty Road, which is the path that the Allied forces moved to liberate Europe, and to focus on the world's peace, on world peace at this time when we're experiencing a lot of global geopolitical turmoil. And we can really powerfully invite everyone to come together, and not only to receive the sound healing from some of the top sound healers in the world. And by sound healing, I mean good music, good vibes. So really with people who are sharing good vibes in the world, and with all the love, and really are here to heal people from trauma, because sounds and frequencies can do that. And we seek to scientifically prove that as well. And also creating this ripple and this global movement of artists and creators across France alone, that ripple, and then inviting global leaders to come in and to agree all together to not solve conflict with violence, and to come together and to sign a new peace treaty, just as they did after World War II. this happening in the global north, because France is one of the main countries that they have colonies all over the world, and so this ripple of sound and frequencies and of healing this land does actually create a ripple that goes out to colonies and nations that France has colonized historically, and is set actually very scientifically to heal that as well. And so this is also something that
Marion, that's
we,
very
yes.
interesting. I think that the inclusion of the global south is necessary. Annika, you had a question.
Of course, and just one more on that point, just really quickly. So with France, we're starting here, and also we have 9 seasons planned for the Peace Train in places like Peru and in Brazil and the Amazon, and very close to the tribes in the Amazon, Mexico, and also very importantly, and most importantly, I feel, we are creating the essential infrastructure with our technology platform so that any community anywhere in the world can sound heal their own land and lineage and themselves, so that they can have access to the production value, to the sponsors, to the partners, and we're demonstrating how this is done, and then creating
Marion, I
space for
appreciate
everyone
it,
to
but
do
we've
that
got a couple
themselves.
more questions
Of
for the
course.
other panelists. So,
Of course.
just hold on
100%.
for a second. Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Annika,
complete.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna try to shift the conversation to the other side of the silo problem. We had a panel yesterday on how gender identity affects whether we just stay in that fight. Can we fight the fight over here as well? I want to talk a little bit about Maslow's pyramid. If you have a mother of 3 in an underserved community, how do we get people like that to look at climate change as well? How do we, from the giving side, help consumers on the receiving side to see the bigger problem? Is that even possible? How do you guys approach this? Tammy, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would just say simply, I got to study a bit with Paul Farmer when I was at Harvard. Mountains by Mountains is a common, reading material here in the US in schools. And of course, they got on the map, Partners in Health did, by having been present with their community healthcare model in Haiti when the earthquake struck, and they were able to help locate individuals that otherwise people wouldn't have anywhere, to start on that search. And what they realized from that was that the community healthcare model, which was extremely anthropological in its approach, said we really value the whole living system that a human being is in. So rather than having people get bussed into the nearest city and come into a clinic, we need to be with them in their world to understand what the environment is around them. And then we can make a recommendation on what we think might help best. And so it's like that, if we're going to go in and expect for individuals to be able to even have a fair shot at being a part of this global conversation, we have to listen first and lean in and kind of find our own inner anthropologist, so that we can understand that there's a whole world that they're living within that we can't pretend to comprehend if we don't get there first. And when we come in with these solutions that we just assume are so great because they've worked in all these Western situations before, we might have to set all of that aside and understand we have tools and toolkits and stuff that have worked, but there might be some new thing that's presenting itself today. I really believe we have as much to learn from people in any of these places as we might have answers, probably more to learn than we would have answers. But we can come together and really knit the edges of the puzzle pieces that we each carry to co-create something new. It has to be in light of the whole living system. Every stakeholder, every plant, every piece of soil, every animal, where it touches the water, where the water flows, the air quality, the people, the businesses, all of it. Every single thing that's in a whole living system. There's this thing called autopoiesis. I won't go into it here, but Google it. It's really cool. It came on the scene in the 70s. It's affected many, many different sectors, even though it's lesser known by name. But this is an important concept for us moving forward. It means a whole living system has capabilities to keep itself regenerative and stable, but it also creates points of interoperability with the world around it where necessary. And that's the way I think we have to be going into these things. Stabilize, yes. the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People need healthcare, food, and water. We are at a point where that should not be a question. This is a matter of deployment. How do we get on page the same, do our asset momentum evaluations, and start to get the solutions out there? Stop gating ourselves with these imaginary limits that we really put on the system, put on ourselves, and we prevent ourselves from the progress that we deserve on the whole as humanity.
Thank you so much for that. Angu, what about you?
So this is, I guess this is what they call a softball, because it's right in my lane, right? I actually believe that, so there's a dichotomy, this whole thing about being a social entrepreneur, for example. I have on the belief that folks from underserved or under-tapped or under-optimized communities are by nature social entrepreneurs. So if you go to my village and ask the folks in the village, who are the great people? Who are the successful people in the village? They will be defined by those that did the most for others. Okay. And even in India today, if you go in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and all these other societies, the people that the locals, that the community considers as successful are those that have done the most for others while they are doing well for themselves. Now, why is that important? Because if you are going to participate, from the perspective of the givers, right? If you have capital and I have the market and I have the delivery system, capital usually comes with governance constraints and governance requirements. That's why capital on its own, not properly deployed, can actually destroy society. So if you really are, if you're aware of the potential destructive effect of capital, you should give capital and allow the locals to set the governance criteria. Okay, because if you give me $100 million, and you make sure that if your sole requirement is I don't want to lose money, ideally I want to make a return. So great. Now, do you mind if I decide how I deploy it and what I do with it? Don't try to control my behavior. Don't try to control what else I invest in. Yes, I'm going to invest in a farm, but I'm probably going to build a school and I'm probably going to build a clinic. And you're like, what does that have to do with the farm? Well, because it builds loyalty. Instead of me doing stock options and all the other stuff you do in the West, that school and the hospital and the clinic gets all my farmers to work even longer, and it's a soft benefit that is built into that community, and it protects my farm. So tomorrow on a Sunday, on a day when the farm's not operational, they're not going to steal from it, because it's called an integrated community-based development model. So the way you do ESG in an untapped or emerging economy is to have an integrated project delivery model where you put the community, kind of like what Tammy's saying, you put the community and the locals at the center, not at the periphery, but at the center of the design of the initiative and of the project. You make them a very, very, very important key stakeholder. Now, here's a unique thing. Technology allows us to do that in a manner that is non-intrusive and it's actually clear. So blockchain technology or distributed ledger technology has this thing called a DAO, right? Mm-hmm. A decentralized autonomous organization that you can use smart contracts and use blockchain to design a governance structure where the local community can be part of the decision-making to inform whatever goes on in the project that you, the financier, put money in. So we can really, really use the latest, and to Tammy's point, data by itself is useless, but having taken the data and having its utilitarian value and having the data be an asset which changes behavior is the power of the data here, right? So we cannot do anything without the right kind of software, data generative AI system that allows us to change our behavior in a manner that we get the outcome that is best for the locals, not for us, but for the local community first, and then the stakeholder secondarily.
Yeah, Angu, it's a very interesting proposition that you made. You know, we did a large project in Africa on looking at ethical mining. Mm-hmm. and looking at the abuse in the mining practices. And what we came back with on that was some very, very deep learnings. And you're absolutely correct. Creating the school, creating housing for the miners actually providing drinkable, potable water,
Water.
which was not the thing. They were drinking from the same slurry, which was the mine waste, which was high in arsenic and mercury and not to mention the child labor. Instead of saying use the child labor, why don't you put the children in school?
In school.
Yeah, then the parents will be more attracted to come work in your mine. And they will never leave. They will work harder. They will do better. They will not steal because their children are being taken care of. They have drinking water. They have a house. They have or shelter. They have food, and they have healthcare. This is not. Yeah,
it's called the dignity index. Okay.
Exactly. I was just gonna say that to you. Yeah.
If you poor people, if I'm less economically fortunate than you are, right? Because it's all fortune based on how you were born and all kinds of stuff. But if economically we're at a disparity, the thing that you can do that would destroy me more than anything else is by treating me as if I'm less human than you are. You can live in your big house and I can live on the street. I'm okay. I was already living on the street before we met. But if you, on your way to your big house, spit on me and kick me and throw cold water on me when it's cold, that is the insult. It's not where we are. It's how you treat me while you're where you're up here, right? And the way to make ESG, to reduce the silos, is by building into it a dignity index, if I were to call it that. And I literally just came up with that. So if we call it a dignity index, what is a dignity index? A dignity index is building systems or offerings within your project that allow the local community to feel more dignified, to feel like they are on par with the stakeholders, to feel like they are a true partner by caring for the things they care for the most, their children, their community, their loved ones, allowing the man or the woman to work whatever hours because you've allowed for housing, subsidized housing, or for school, or clean water, or an environment, just basic stuff, right? That's how you do this. It's not magic, right? But it's by allowing 2 or 3 points less on your financial return for 20x multiple on your valuation down the road.
Absolutely.
This is the
I
play.
completely agree. No, so we're kind of running low on time. So what I'd like to do is just ask a simple last question. And everybody will have a minute to answer that, which is just, if given all the situation that we have, what we are talking about here is combining various sources of investment, whether it's coming from established UN organizations, whether it's coming from family offices, whether it's coming from individuals, whether it's coming from innovative projects like with the one Ingo is building, with a percentage of a business going into philanthropic side of it. What would be the most important thing for you as entrepreneurs, as collaborators, as people that are wanting to see the change? What is the most important thing that governance can do, whether it's local governments, whether it's the African Union, whether it's the BRICS countries, whether it's whatever organization there is? So I'll start with you, Marion. What is the role of government in all of this?
Great question. Thank you, Anand. So, so for governments, specifically for the peace train, I feel like governments being open to the peace train to come in and to celebrate the music and art and culture. And in terms of what we're doing with France, to provide tax credits and opportunities for filmmaking in that country, that's a big deal. Also, to shift to another type of governance with corporate social responsibility, we are inviting brands and corporations globally to take the Peace Pledge and to donate 2% of their net annual profits to peace. And that 2% annually with transparency is going towards our founding alliance of the best organizations in the world that are waging peace and prosperity.
Marion, I'm going to stop you right there. So
yes.
we've got to move to
yes.
Tammy. Tammy.
Certainly. Thank you.
I love Marin's answer, and I'd love to see more people get involved with the peace train. I think for governance, it's the main thing in my estimation is the presence of the stakeholders in cooperation and synergy with one another, and how to find that. I think sometimes our perception is about whether we agree on something or whether something's being held up. The things that are maybe impede progress where we want more progress. But if we will look at things to find the nuggets of the value, like we're all fractal representations of the whole. That's the same thing in any system. So the government is a fractal representation of the whole. It's serving its purpose somewhere. Let's look at the nugget of what it can do to unlock moving forward, where it creates a win-win with them as a stakeholder. And then that shows that illuminates a path forward, even in the stuck areas. So that's how I would say they can participate, is like literally as being present in that regard.
Thank you. Angu, we're going to have you do the ending of this.
Thank you. So I think in terms of frameworks, right? So there's the framework I have is called a PLCI, which is policy, laws, capacity building, and investment. So wherever there's government or governance, it needs to set a kind of a policy framework around whatever the initiative is, because then on the basis of that, like the African Union or any other organization, on the basis of that, there should be laws that are passed that allow for people to be trained, for capacity to be available locally, because when capacity is available, then investment returns are lower risk. Because the reason we have high risk investment is the inability to deliver against the targets. And there's investment risk, environmental. So it's a PLCI play. Set the right policy, make sure the right laws are in place, build the capacity at the local environment, the local community, and then invest accordingly so that you have a lower risk investment and a high opportunity for return.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I know each one of you could have your own panel, and we could discuss this even more and more. But unfortunately, we're out of time. So I wanted to thank Anika for being co-moderator, and to the three of you, I would say keep going what you're doing, and certainly you can be the start of something which combines efforts, which brings different philosophies together. Whether it's looking from not looking from one lens, but looking from multiple lenses around the world. So thank you very much. You have been wonderful, and again, we'll look forward to you participating in our next one.